I've been a little surprised at some of the negative criticism that has surrounded The Good Dinosaur. I'm not really sure where a lot of it's come from. I know some of it's been heavily focused on the violence in the film. But personally, I don't know, I think they're being a little bit kind of cruel almost. I didn't find it a particularly violent film, not in any sense that wasn't absolutely legitimate. So I thought it might be a good opportunity just to talk about the film, and in case you were concerned about taking your child. I mean, this is a film that I really wouldn't want you to miss out on as a parent, or to take your child to, because I think there is so much, wonder in it that it'd be a shame to miss out on it just because of some of the critical feedback. So what I think with this film, it actually reminds me a lot of the early Disney films, even back to kind of Bambi and the early Snow White and that kind of thing. The sense of peril is similar. And also the honesty about how animals behave and how nature works. So, for example, things happen. There are animal attacks and animal fights and things like that really do actually happen in the wild. Animals do hunt other animals for food. Animals do provoke and attack other animals. And even though it's bloodless, it's not particularly nasty in that sense or graphic. I think that there's been a few critics have picked up on the fact that there is a bit of biting. There's, like for example, one bug, its whole head is kind of ripped off. But I don't know, I really do think it's, more aimed at sort of very young children who can actually accept and tolerate that kind of level of what we'd call violence. So for me, it reminds me of, a kind of a Disney film aimed at very small children, even up to the age of, say, 4 and 5, maybe 6. But it's more of a grown-up version of that demographic. It's not childish. It speaks to those children in a way that they do understand. They do understand that this is what nature is like. This is what the world is like. This is what it's like to struggle, growing up, to finding your way, and these kind of things. I think the themes in some ways are very watered down. The storytelling is watered down. So is the plot development in order to appeal to that very young demographic. But all of the rest of it is still in place. So the idea of that violence, for example. So for me, though, it wasn't really the biting or the animal attacks that were more of a cause of concern, but there was a couple of scenes where people are swept away and near drowned. And one character then subsequently because of this, becomes afraid of storms. So lightning and thunder and heavy rain terrifies this character. And I think that's really where the meat of the subject is. This is, where we can talk to children about where phobias begin, where fears begin, where, some kind of event happens and then we carry it later on into other events or become wary of things. It doesn't even have to be on that grand scale. It can be more of a simplified level. We've been bitten once, hurt once by one thing, and we don't want to do it again. Well, we can get over that. We can trace it back to a certain event, deal with that, and move on. So I think that's really where a lot of the colour in the themes is in this film. So, when we're talking about violence, yep, there's a lot of, there's characters are punched and attacked, and, there's a pterodactyl type creature which has its wing kind of torn open. Where the animal attacks, I guess, get a little bit, I suppose, worrying for small children is, the ones that are for food, fair enough, we can accept that. But there is a group of animals that then go and target our central character. And that's when it becomes a little bit more menacing. They're not attacking for food or survival, they're attacking purely out of being, despicable creatures. So that's when the mood takes a shift. But, back to this, this storm and being swept away. There's a character who's knocked unconscious a few times. There's a death. There's, death of a parent. Again, another major theme, which, is a wonderful opportunity to talk to children about the loss of a family member. So these are the kind of things, that I would suggest, and recommend you look for in the film rather than, there's biting and scratching in the film. Again, as I said, there's not a lot of it's bloodless and it's not really gory, but there are these, big events happen. And there's one storytelling scene where someone talks about, a crocodile attack and you see a tooth lodged in his gum still, and someone talks about, some injury detail and that kind of thing. But again, it's in a not comic setting, but in a positive, upbeat, sitting around the fire setting to kind of make it a little bit more palatable for very small children. There isn't any sex or nudity in the film. There's a small child, which is just wearing a loincloth throughout the film, but certainly no sex or nudity or anything like that. Same with alcohol, no alcohol, but there's one very bizarre scene, which I'd put in the drug category, where some characters eat these berries and they start to hallucinate. And it's quite a bizarre scene because it feels out of place with the rest of the film. You see, you know, the other character, they're looking at the other character and they grow bigger heads or extra heads and extra body parts and, you know, oversized body parts and things like that. It's quite a trippy sequence, which happens, it's a fairly quick scene and then it's over. But I would say that's a little bit out of character for the rest of the film. It's the only scene that kind of jumps out at me as being a little bit weird, and you might get kids going, what was that about? Again, there's no offensive language or profanity anywhere in the film. I think there's some name calling, but that's about it. But what the real wonderful thing about this film is, and I couldn't recommend it highly enough, is in the visuals. I honestly haven't seen anything more stunning, more breathtaking on film than the visuals in The Good Dinosaur. I'm always a bit skeptical when I read a review and they say that, you know, the visuals or the cinematography was jaw-dropping. I mean, I really hate terms like that because they sound so cliched. But then I was watching this film and I realised that my mouth was actually hanging open at one point. So I thought, yeah, okay, I think jaw-dropping would be okay to describe these visuals. I mean, I really can't get across enough. They are absolutely stunning and very immersive as well. You feel like you have been transported back in time, or at least across time, into another world where nature is beautiful and menacing at the same time. And again, there's beauty in that, the idea of nature being so giving but so treacherous at the same time. These themes I keep coming back to, I find, you know, the richest part of the film. So The Good Dinosaur, you know, I would say little kids, when my youngest was just turned 4 when I took him to see it, and was just mesmerised, loved it. So I think this is okay for little kids. Like I said, it's aimed at very small children, but it's kind of a more grown-up version of storytelling. Well, not storytelling, but I guess visual, you know, experience for them. So I thought it was wonderful. I really did. In fact, when we saw it, my husband turned straight around to me as the credits were rolling and went, oh my God, that was amazing. So, you know, our family did really enjoy it, and I hope yours does too. The Good Dinosaur is directed by Peter Sohn and stars a beautiful voice cast, really lovely voice work from Raymond Ochoa, Jeffrey Wright, Frances McDormand, among others. If you want to read more about the actual violence, the content in the film, take a look at my website, which is cinemum.net.